We'll talk. Yeah. Hey, kid. Mr. Charlie, where you're going, I'm taking notes.
Clock will be on. Every clock.
Every clock. Let's do I missed something. Which is awesome. I get a chance to you come to what?
Yeah.
I'll go get one back. Oh, you're up to my man. I don't have the trouble. Trevor tried to sit there, but we chased him off. There might even be an extraordinary script. You got it. If you work hard enough, I can become extraordinary. Yes. I'll need you to say that on camera, say that writing. You don't have to stand a little closer to the radio anymore. Well, it's a never-ending battle. It really is. I wake up in the morning and it looks at me and Mama. Honest, I can miss one day, and I don't have much to miss one day. When you play on shape, one of these days, everything up top of the tape. I got a picture of you. He put pictures of you in school. No. Yeah.
Tell me all about
And I assume the stream is ready.
Yes. It should be, Mike, it should be up now. Okay.
Yeah. That's what I was doing with this stuff.
Yeah.
And then I'm going to be on the bed. I know Stevie and Alex between Sarah's here. So on the bed.
Hey, Mike, is it back up now? It should be. The things I get excited about. What did you guys do?
Yeah, he said
You don't go around being things that
All right, joint committee on children, families, and ways and means. We're back in session. I call to order. We're going to go ahead and start with our first witness from the Department of Health and Human Services, Gail Basterly. You come forward. Thank you, Director. I don't know if you have an opening statement or anything to say, or if you're just ready to take questions.
I'm Gail Basterling. I'm the Director of the Missouri Department of Health and Senior Services, and I'm prepared to take questions.
All right. First witness, Representative Huber. Proceed.
Would you mind to explain to us the process for when the survey team goes out? Would you explain that process either, and I'm sure it's different during the licensure process versus, after the licensure process, and some of the questions and whatnot.
The inspection or survey teams will go out on an initial inspection if an ambulatory surgical center is wanting to get licensed. And that would be on a date that was agreed upon. And then for a complaint investigation or a renewal of a license, it would be whenever we show up. And the survey team the size of the survey team would depend on the facility, but would include registered nurses and someone who has life safety code expertise. And what they do is observe and look at documents and do interviews. And at the end of the survey, they would prepare a statement of deficiencies. And then the facility would get a chance to do a plan of correction with regard to that statement of deficiencies.
I do have a question on the renewal process. How is that different than a new application?
Well, the licenses are 1-year licenses. And so an initial application, you might be actually building a facility or something like that. So we would work with the facility to go out and look at, their construction when they were ready for us to look. But with regard to making sure they meet the requirements of the law and our regs, it's the same. I think the difference is it's usually agreed upon time with the facility, and there's If they are newly constructing the facility, we will go out and look at their construction perhaps before it's all completed, but when it's ready for us to.
So you're saying there's really no difference between a renewal and a new applicant unless they're building a new building?
I think they look at the same things. If it's a facility that's not been opened, there would probably be less ability to observe what's going on in the facility, obviously, because once the facility's open and it's taking patients, you can observe more readily.
Representative Hagan.
Jim Farber.
Proceed.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Thank you. Do you have a checkoff list form that your inspectors mark off and comments that they make?
We have,
Would you be able to provide that for the committee?
I will do that if I can. They take along, on an abortion facility, they'll take along all of Chapter 188 to make sure they have the latest version of the law.
So what's your checkoff list when an inspector comes out there and comes back in and says that they've approved the either renewal or the application for the new? What checkoff list do you get to make the final approval?
Well, that doesn't come to me. The final approval is at the bureau level.
Okay, what forms do they get to show that it's passed or failed?
The list is essentially our
It
regs.
doesn't exist.
No, they have a checkoff list, and they also.
Can you provide that for us?
I will, if I can.
Thank you, Mr. Chair.
Representative Newman.
Good afternoon. Thanks for being here and helping us answer these questions. Some quick questions here. How many ambulatory surgical centers do we have that are licensed in Missouri? Just give a ballpark of how many we're talking about.
I can get that for you, but I would think it's hundreds.
Hundreds?
I would think so.
Okay, and then from that hundreds of ambulatory surgical centers, how many renewals do you deal with? Since these are one-year licenses.
Again, I would have to get that for you.
But if they're one-year licenses, obviously there's hundreds of renewals that you're dealing with all the time. I mean, we know that we're talking today specifically about one surgical center in Columbia. Do you have any concerns yourself that there has been any problem with renewing that license?
No.
So you don't feel that from the regulations and that exist in law and from your own inspection survey teams, you don't have any questions or any concerns about this facility?
No.
All right, thank you.
Representative Brown.
Thank you for being here. I asked your liaison for the same thing. I wanted the list of questions that are taken when you go out, whether it's Columbia, once they're up and running, or the St. Louis, one of those lists of questions. And I don't think I could accept that you would take the regs and the statutes and use those. And that wouldn't be manageable. You have to have a list somewhere that says, is this right, is this right, is this right? And then I also asked for, and I'm hoping I can get that very soon, like the last 5 years, every time you've gone to a facility, what your people took with them, what the report was that they prepared, what the response was from Planned Parenthood, and then what follow-up visit included.
And I think we can get that for you with regards to statement of deficiencies and plans of care.
Well, no, that is not what I'm asking for. If you tell me what was wrong, that's fine. I want to know what you checked that was right. How do I know that you're checking everything if I don't have a list that you said, we asked this question, this question, and this question?
And the survey notes are closed records. The actual interview, the survey notes would include the checklist, but also interviews and everything that's surveyed.
Okay, let's stop for a second. Okay. There are surveys and there are inspections. You use them interchangeably. Are they interchangeable?
Well.
Is there anything else? Are there other ways that the visits where they're going when your staff is going to Planned Parenthood? How many ways do you go?
Well, we go if there was a complaint, and we go for word inspection. And I think the term survey is used more often with regard to a facility that's licensed or required to be licensed under federal law and CMS guidelines. So I should probably say inspection.
Okay, inspection. So, but you understand what I'm saying? I mean, I've been in business and we can't just go with, I've got a stack of recs here, like so, and I find myself getting lost in them. So you can't take regs and do anything with them. You have to have a list of, I'm gonna ask this, I'm gonna ask this, I'm gonna ask this.
And I will provide the form if I can for you.
And why couldn't you provide a form?
I talked to my legal counsel about that.
No, I'm saying the form the blank form that you would take when you go to the facility, not the filled out form. I mean, a filled out form I like also, but the blank form that you take to the facility.
And I will get that for you if I can.
Okay. I still don't understand how it could be that you couldn't get that form.
And I just need to talk to my legal counsel and my staff about that.
Okay, thank you.
Representative Neely.
Inquiry, please.
Proceed.
On these inspections or surveys, are they done all ambulatory? Are they all, say we have an orthopedic ambulatory center and urology and abortion, are they all done? The same individuals do the same survey or inspection?
I think each team would include RNs and life safety code experts.
They're not specific to a certain ambulatory center, like all orthopedic, all urology, or are they just a mix of
Not that I know
RNs?
of. Not that I know of that they were specific to it.
So you're saying that everything is consistent. If there's an orthopedic, urology, and abortion center in Columbia, they're all inspected by the same team. Make up to the same team.
I think the makeup would be the same. I'm not saying the individuals on the team.
Understand that. In the scope of practice, does anybody function out of their scope of practice? Because I hear in long-term care that oftentimes people work out of their area of practice. You may have an RN working as a survey team as a dietitian, or vice versa, in various areas of surveys. Any thoughts on that?
Not that I know of with regard to ambulatory surgical centers.
Would that surprise you if there is someone that's working out of their scope of practice?
For the purposes of these surveys?
Correct.
I don't think that's going on.
Okay. What if it is going on?
I would look into it.
Okay, I think we should. Follow up. Thank you. That's fine. Thank you.
Representative Lauer. Representative Brimley. Proceed.
Did your survey team survey the Columbia facility?
Yes.
Did the team approve their application? Did you all approve their application?
Yes.
In your survey, does it include checking out the health professionals such as a doctor to see if they meet all the requirements? Is that in your survey as well?
Yes.
And also the hospital that they have to, that they're required to have services in case something would go wrong.
Clinical privileges. Yes.
Yeah, that's checked out as well.
Yes.
With the survey.
Yeah.
Okay, thank you.
One quick question I'm going to ask is how many people in the department work on the survey team?
Yeah, that's where you have to look at it.
All right.
I was just thinking that perhaps there is a protocol regulation somewhere that we could all go take a look at and see what is laid out for the inspection team to look at. You know, that would answer a lot of these questions if we could go see, this is the protocol, this is what we're looking for, this is what is expected to be done. when. And I'm, is there someone else that we should ask these questions of? Because I realize you operate a director for a whole department.
Right, I mean, ambulatory surgical centers do a lot of different things, and we inspect toward what services they're going to offer. So I don't know if I have something that covers all ambulatory surgical centers with regard to what you're asking.
Okay. All right, I was just trying to make it a little simpler, that, in particular, we're interested in the inspections that take place, of course, at the abortion providing facilities. So is there a standard checklist and standard protocols in place for the inspection of those facilities?
I think that's what we've been discussing.
That's what we've been discussing, and so the answer still is you don't know, or you're going to provide that, or?
If I can. But if we're talking about the checklist, I will provide that.
Yeah, again, there must be written down somewhere what the inspection entails and whose responsibilities are what. That must be written down. It can't be, why wouldn't that be able to be provided?
Well, it is written down in our regulations and it's written down in statute. So that's what we expect to.
Yes. Yeah. Okay. So my follow-up for that is, where can we reference that regulation? Where can we find that? And you don't have to tell us today, but if you provide that to us, that's what we want to see.
Okay.
All right. All right. Thank you.
Representative Allen?
To inquire.
Proceed.
Thank you. Okay, first of all, can you give us a brief outline so the members here on this committee, in this hearing, will be able to have a vision of the individuals, the layers of responsibility. James, thank you, sir. Chain of command. Can you give us that?
With regards to
What we're talking about.
well, the survey team would report to the Bureau.
No, I mean bureaucrats. Who's in charge? I want to know where the oversight is, where's the accountability, who, if you don't know these answers, who does, and where are they? And if you don't know them, and you've already had one of these hearings, I think that you lived through over in the Senate. So my question is, my request is, if you will tell us who's under you, who you would expect to know, and give us the layers of responsibility, accountability, oversight for this.
And I was trying to do that from the survey team up. Is that an okay way to do it?
Okay, so if the survey team holds the ultimate responsibility?
No,
Well,
they would be the ones that go to the facility.
Okay, so survey team first, then who?
They would report to the Bureau Chief of the Bureau of Ambulatory Care.
Okay.
And he would be within the section on hospital licensure. And that section is within the Division of Regulation. And that,
Regulation and licensure, right?
and that division reports to me.
So you're the director.
Right.
So, okay, so a lot of these questions have gone to the survey teams. So if we had questions, or where we have questions about the survey teams, assessments and all, does that Bureau Chief of Bureau Ambulatory Care, do they pay attention and do they hold the survey teams accountable?
That would be part of the job, yes.
Do they do it?
I think so.
Is that person someone at some point we might be able to, who is that person?
John Langston.
Okay, I've met with him, okay. And then who is the person for the section on hospital licensure? Is that Linneman?
No, the director of that section is Julie Creech. The deputy director is Bill Coleman.
And so I guess a lot of concerns are that we don't have people here, because I'm assuming you had some sense of where this hearing was going to go. And so my concern is that there's been no one here that you could look over your shoulder, kind of like we do in budget, to answer those questions so we get answers.
Well, I will attempt to answer any of your questions.
Okay, will we be able to discuss these so that we have follow-up questions as you answer those questions? So I guess that's to the chairs too, because it's one thing to get a flat answer on a piece of paper that, okay, that's the short answer, but then to be able to have a follow-up question on that to clarify.
Yeah, we're gonna have another hearing and we can certainly,
We can call some of these other people in, okay. Then, okay, so where we have instances, for instance, I did have a meeting, I have an email back from December of 13, where a lot of the inspections and the whole issues regarding these ambulatory cares, that says that at that point, 63%, I guess the success rate was 63%, that inspections were completed on time. So you can say, well, it's good, 63 did, but then you have 37% didn't. So a third of the inspections, are we still at about that amount of compliance with regulations for inspections?
I don't believe so with regard to Planned Parenthood. We've been there in the last 2 years, yearly, and that's as long as I've been the director.
And you were interim director, acting director for how long?
A year.
Okay. So, all right. Well, that's all for now. Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Representative Kirkman, proceed.
Thanks for being here. I really wish we would have brought some people that would help you answer the questions. I'm sure that you've been to committee meetings before. It's usually what department directors and heads of different agencies and organizations do. But I do have 2 quick questions. You said that the survey teams that the reports are closed records.
The survey notes, yes.
Okay, they're closed records. How long do those records or do those notes, how long do you keep those and where do you store them?
I would have to check. I don't know.
Okay. Another reason why it's good for people that will help answer some questions. I know we have other people here that help answer the questions. If you could get that answer to me, I'd really appreciate it.
Okay.
Representative Cross.
Mr. Chairman, I'd like to make just a brief comment. I'd like to hear from Mr. Copel. Okay, I'd like to hear from the deputy director, and I'd also like to hear from
we actually,
Ms. Creech, is that how you pronounce it?
Right.
Okay, I would like both those people to appear.
we do have the deputy director.
I would like to hear from both of those folks.
That's fine.
Please. Thank you.
Representative Brown, did you have?
Well, since we're saying what we'd like, I would like John Wayne. He says his name John Langston, I would like him here. But, okay, back to the survey inspection that has that I can't see, and why can't I see it again? Tell me, why is it closed?
Give you the site. It's within chapter 197, and it talks about the statement of deficiencies and the plan of correction of the open records, and then the survey note. I mean, it's sort of like an audit, you know, everybody goes out and surveys their part, but when they come together, they put together what they see as deficiencies. And then that is the survey team's problem, the deficiencies.
Okay. Okay. Yeah, and I think that's right. That's really what we're looking for. What is it there? How do we know if we, all of us, are doing our job and making sure that that facility is doing their job and that those women are being treated correctly? If we don't only are told these are the failures, not these were the successes, you may not be asking a question that should be. That's our problem. Okay, thank you.
All right, I had a couple other questions. I want to go a little bit different direction. I'm looking at the Department of Health and Human Services regulation, and I'm on page 14. And it says one of the things that's provided is all cases and abortions that are transferred to a hospital, and also all cases that resulted in length more than 12 hours. So I was wondering if you had those statistics, or if you could give those statistics for us.
I think that's something that the survey team looks for. I don't know that we, do a statistical survey of that, but if we do, I can get it for you.
All right. And then also on that same page, on page 14, looking at C on the right-hand side, it says all tissue obtained from abortions, except tissue submitted to a pathologist or analyst, shall be submerged in preservative solution and shall be transported in a leak-proof container to a facility with waste sterilizer or an incinerator approved by the Department of Natural Resources. So I was wondering if there's any kind of check and balance on how we know that this is actually being done, because it's in our regulations that it should be done.
And they check for what's in the regulations, so they check for that when they go out.
Do you know how many facilities in the state might meet these requirements? Or how many companies, offer this service?
These are the regulations for abortion facilities.
Right.
And so you'd be talking about the St. Louis abortion facility.
Well, yeah, that would be correct. So what I'm getting at is, one of the things one of the main points of this committee is looking into is trying to determine whether or not any fetal tissue or organs or baby parts have been sold. Well, we have a proper way of disposing of these human beings, and I want to see that it's being followed. So I'm just asking, do you know how many facilities are approved in the state to take? Or which
Approved by the Department of Natural Resources. I can find out, I don't know.
Right. Representative Neely.
Inquiry, please. The public report is generated on these inspections, is that correct?
A statement of deficiency.
Okay, but the statement of deficiency just says that. It doesn't say that the inspection was thorough. It just says that this is what they found or what they looked into. Is it just kind of like, if you don't know, you don't know, or if you didn't look, you get a negative. I can get a negative result on about any test imaginable if I wanted to, but the reality of it is, if it's a statement of deficiencies, that doesn't mean that it's all encompassing and everything was looked at. Is that correct?
We look at everything that's in the regulations and in 188. and the statutes and the things that are not met are put in the statement of deficiencies.
So everything is absolutely looked at, and like on the drug, RU 486, there's a certain protocol that's to be followed on that with the physician prescribing, and that they're certainly on staff at a full-scale hospital and not just on staff at an ambulatory care center. Do we look to see what their privileges are at that hospital? There's a difference between having privileges to take someone to surgery and just being on staff. Do we look at those?
We look to see that they're on staff because that's what the regulation requires. We look to see that they have clinical privileges because that's what section 188.
Clinical privileges to follow through on the complications.
I mean,
The assumption is yes.
The law says that they have to have clinical privileges.
But I think the issue I see here is we have a statement of deficiencies. That doesn't imply that a full exam or a full evaluation was conducted. And it means on your report, I mean, it may say that. Could you provide a statement of deficiencies on the last ambulatory surgery center out of Planned Parenthood in Columbia? Can you provide that to me?
Yes.
Okay, thank you.
Representative Kirkman.
Doing quiet.
Proceed.
Back again. Got a question regarding the licensing of the Columbia facility. When you issued that license, is that based off of one document that you relied on that they met all the requirements for licensing, or did you rely on more than one document?
More than one.
Right. So whenever the Columbia facility was seeking to get licensed, I'm sure that they had to submit information, material, documents. Can you tell me a little bit about that? Did you just rely on, was there one form, for example, or was there multiple forms and documents that you kind of looked at as a whole to determine whether or not they met the requirements for licensing?
We would look at their policies and procedures. We would look at whether they had the informed consent information that they needed. We would look at the construction of the facility. We would look at, information about the doctor.
Is that information available? Like, could you actually furnish us the information that you used to determine whether or not they met the requirements for licensing?
And in fact, those are the survey notes.
I don't think those are survey notes for that licensing though, right?
Well, I mean, they look at the information at the facility, and I don't know that I have all their
right. Because when you're issuing the license, you're not issuing the license based off of just the survey notes, right? I'm sure that there's more information beyond just the survey notes that the survey team would ask. I'm sure that there's more documents. What documents? What kind of things did they give to you to prove to you that they were in compliance in order to get the requirements for licensing? Was it one document? Was it a multitude of documents to prove that they met certain requirements for licensing?
I would say that it was more than one document.
There's more than one document.
That the survey team would look at when they were at the facility.
So
not that we would necessarily bring back and have copies of and all of that, but they would look at it at the facility.
okay. So ultimately, maybe I missed this before. Are you saying that the survey team is responsible? They're the ones that are basically in charge of deciding whether or not the facility gets a license.
They are in charge of making sure that the facility has met the requirements for a license. Yes.
Okay, so the facility meets the requirements for a license. To make sure I'm clear, the survey team is the one that has that accountability.
Right.
Okay, and can we get that information to prove that they're ready for a license? Prove that they meet the requirements for a license.
I can give you the statement of deficiencies in their plan of correction, which was what were the only things that were deficient for the survey team, and the corrective action that the facility took.
Okay, and is that different, a renewal, than an initial application for licensing?
I think they're looking at the same thing.
The same things? I might have more questions later. You're helping me. Thank you.
Representative Mann.
May I ask a few
Yes,
questions, please?
proceed.
Thank you for being here this afternoon. You mentioned you've been in charge of last. Thank you. I'm new at this. Thank you for being here this afternoon. You mentioned that you've been the director for 2 years. It's all becoming a blur. And before that, you were deputy director.
I was for a year.
And prior to that, were you with the department?
Yeah.
Okay. So these last 2 years, in 2013 and 2014, the surveys and inspections were conducted. In 2010, when you were the deputy, a survey or inspection was not conducted. Can you tell me why that happened?
I believe it was staffing issues, and I think that's always been an issue going back.
Can you make sure you're speaking into the microphone? So that way everybody in the room can hear.
I think it involves staffing issues, having enough staff, and back in the Blunt administration, they were not inspecting these facilities either because of staffing issues, I believe.
So are these facilities up for renewal every year?
Yes.
And so if there's not a survey or inspection conducted, are they automatically granted a renewal?
I don't know, but I would think so, yes.
And if the department, such as Division of Social Services, is not following regulations that are designed to protect women and their health, are there sanctions warranted against the department? And if so, what are those sanctions?
I think we are following it, so.
If they are not following the regulations those set forth by policy, are there regulations or sanctions levied against that department?
Not that I know.
So when you were deputy director, there was no survey or inspection in, I believe it was 2010, 2012 perhaps, yeah, 2012. There were no repercussions within the department.
As I said, it was a staffing issue. We don't have the staff to do everything that we're required to do.
Representative Higgins.
Just Mark.
Proceed.
Thank you. And we'll go back to what our chair was talking about earlier on the procedures. Once the procedure is completed on a portion, they take the tissues and, you know, the whole bodies, part bodies, or whatever, they put them, they seal them. If we had 14 procedures, we should have 14 or multiple if they do autopsy or dismemberment or however they get torn apart. Does anyone at the recipient of the disposal and the senders do a checklist to show entirety?
Not sure I understand your question.
Whole bodies, whole intact remains, whether they be in separate jars or what, but you know, all 10 fingers and toes, all legs and arms, all kidneys, all hearts, all brains, all whatever, and that may have been sent to labs. There should be a report that says a certain sample from this tissue was taken from the lab, but there should be a working formula to account for every piece of that individual.
And my understanding with regard to the St. Louis facility is they send all to the pathology lab. They send all of the products of conception to the pathology lab.
Does your office receive any of the reports from the recipients that they received, any from the centers that they sent, any from the pathologies that this amount of procedures was performed in whole bodies or in part, or do you get any of that?
We receive pathology reports, so those are also sent to the facility and put in the patient's file.
Is there accountability for whole part?
The pathology reports will indicate a lot of times that
Absence of.
products, I mean.
So there's a checklist to show that everything went to where it was supposed to go and not sold.
I don't know that I can't speak for the pathology labs, whether they have a checklist. They receive the products of conception and they do a report, pathology report on it.
Does your office check any of those?
We receive the reports, but no, we don't.
All right. Is that case sensitive? Is that something that we would not have access to?
I think those are confidential, but I can check.
All right. Thank you. Thank you, Mr. Chair.
Now, what happens after they go to, and pathologist looks at it? What happens from that point? Because you do have regulations on how to dispose of the babies. So can you expand on that? I mean, where's the check and balance? Because we have regulations here, we have statutes that should cover this.
Correct. This is my understanding. The reg says all tissue not sent to the pathology lab will be transported.
Yeah, but you just said that in all
That's my understanding. That.
So where does the pathologist send it? Do they follow this C
is
in the regulations?
Right, that's a regulation for an abortion facility and
not a pathologist, so they can do whatever they want with it?
I would think that in the law, I would think they would follow the law, but I don't tell you what they do. I would think they would destroy what they want examining.
But there is a proper way to do that, and I would think they would still be subject to these same regulations from the Department of Natural Resources.
They may be, I just don't know.
But these are your department's regulations.
For the abortion.
Yeah, so you should know.
Right, I know that.
And I believe this question was also asked in the Senate.
Right, and
So you've had time to think about this.
right, and my answer is the same, that
You don't know.
understand that all the tissue goes to the pathology lab. And so.
And where does it go from there?
I don't know.
Representative? Or, well, actually, we'll go with you first. All right, Representative Allen.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Thank you, Representative Hubert. Okay, I'd like to go back, and certainly we don't want to lose this very important question, but we had questions from Representatives Moon and Neely about these inspections and whether or not they happened or not. And when you say we don't have staff, then what do you do to, who do you report to? What do you do then to figure out how and when that issue is going to be dealt with to get the staff?
We've done them while I've been director.
You've done every inspection?
We've done the ones at the abortion facility, and I guess we could ask for more staff to through the budget process.
Well, I mean, if we have certain protocols, to me, there needs to be a red flag that says something's not getting done. and do, it seems like we're spending a lot of time and effort and taxpayer dollars to go down, go through this and get these answers. So that would be one thing. Tell us, or well, it sounds like you're not letting us know when these inspections are not performed. That's correct, right?
They've been performed while I've been the director, so
And acting director too?
I would have to check.
Okay, then, okay, so as far as, this process, so if, okay, who audits? What, I mean, in a lot of the functions of a lot of the departments will have a single state audit. Does this ever get audited?
This what?
This process, health and senior services on these type of expectations that we expect you all to accomplish? Does this ever come up in an audit?
Not that I know of.
So is there any federal audit? I mean, we get federal dollars for Planned Parenthood in Missouri.
Not for abortion facilities.
So there's no federal dollars going to any of these facilities?
Not for abortion, so not for abortion.
Not for abortions, but for abortion facilities. So is there a mechanism?
No, let me clarify. We don't get any federal money to survey abortion facilities in the state of Missouri.
But we are spending money where federal money is going to various activities in abortion centers. So the place on Forest Park Parkway has gotten no federal dollars?
Not through the Department of Health and Senior Services, not since 2007.
But they have gotten federal dollars.
Not for abortions, and
But they have gotten federal dollars maybe for DNC for a lady or mammogram or whatever. Have they gotten nothing?
through the Department of Health and Senior Services, the money that I know of that has gone to Planned Parenthood stopped in 2007. The money that went to them before that is for breast and cervical exams. And early on in the 2000s for family planning, but that stopped. I'm thinking, I can't tell you, but 2004 or 5.
Okay, so where does it go? What agency does it go to?
I can only say it doesn't go through the Department of Health and Senior Services.
Yeah, it'd be Health and Senior Services through Medicaid, I'm assuming.
Okay,
We
it goes to
don't do
Medicaid.
the Medicaid part.
Okay. So, okay, I got you. All right, so we're not losing any federal matches based on lack of inspections or any of that, is that correct?
No.
Okay, thank you.
Representative Newman.
Yes, I just wanted to let this committee know some of these questions that we're asking here on taxpayer time can be found online. What I have discovered that it's actually the Department of Natural Resources that deals with human waste, and there's rules online that you can find out all the answers.
Yes, they do deal with it, but these specific regulations are in the Department of Health or the Department of Health and Senior Services. So I don't think it's out of line to ask the department these questions because it's in their regulation.
But what I'm
Specifically
saying,
stated in the regulation.
well, just to let you know, this is a statute. Well, it's actually under the Department of Natural Resources online. It's talking about infectious waste management, which deals with the questions that you've been asking in terms of body tissues.
Well, it's in
how
correlation.
they're actually disposed. So those regulations are found in a different department.
Yeah, it's in conjunction with this regulation. Both regulations apply. Representative Lauer.
Yes, Mr. Chair, inquire.
Proceed.
Do I need a, can you hear me? Okay, thank you. Thank you for being here today. I'd like to ask you, just in regards, some of the questions have had to deal with oversight. And I'm a pretty linear thinker, so if you could just help me or describe in your understanding of Department of Health and Senior Services oversight from point A to point B. So in a facility, does your oversight include any and all portions of activities, facilities, safety, health, so forth in that facility?
Are you talking about an abortion facility?
Yes.
It includes what's in our regs, which are pretty detailed,
Okay.
and it includes patient care services. It includes the structure of the facility. It includes looking at patient records, making sure that the consent forms are appropriate.
Okay. So including all of those things, then, let's say that procedure is indeed done at the abortion facility. So what is your oversight from then on, from that point to the next point?
The next point being
whether it goes to the pathologist, whether it goes to any sort of
our oversight is over the clinic itself and not.
So once it goes, anything happens outside of that brick and mortar, that is no longer in your oversight. Is that what you're saying?
We do inspections of labs to make sure they comport with federal regulations under CLIA, but that is mostly to determine whether they have appropriate staff and are doing the types of laboratory services appropriately.
Okay, so if, let's say I have a facility, just pretending here, but let's say I do, and Representative Brown has a lab, then based on the fact that I would have services performed through Representative Brown's lab, you would have oversight then over that phase as well, is that correct?
We would have oversight with regard to the federal regulations under CLIA. This group of people who would look at your facility or any facility is not the same as the people who would go into a lab and look at lab services.
Okay, so then as far as the let's say the abortion itself, and as they were discussing and taking the line of questioning with that body, the oversight of that, when it leaves my facility and wherever it goes, through whatever disbursement channel that might be, what is your level of oversight as a department?
I don't know that I have oversight over that once it leaves the facility.
Okay, so once it leaves the facility, then your job, not your job, but the department's job is done, and whatever happens after that is beyond your purview?
I believe so.
Okay, thank you. Thank you, Mr. Chair.
Representative Hebert. Proceed.
I have a question on survey teams. They evidently have a lot of responsibility going in, pre and post and during. What type of training, education, that type of thing do the survey teams receive in, continuing education units, during their time serving as a survey team member?
Well, whatever continue, like some of my sons are nurses, RNs. So if there's continuing education requirements with regard to nurses, the life safety code expert would have to keep abreast of any changes to life safety code. And then they may get training from CMS with regard to the surveys that they do, that I talked about, that weren't just state surveys, but federal surveys.
But what about, just from a state standpoint, what type of training do they receive? Because I know survey teams go out to long-term care facilities. I'm a nurse as well. So, what kind of training do they receive when they come into employment as a survey team member in order to do their job, whether it be an abortion facility or not. I mean, no matter what it is, what type of training do they receive in order to be able to be a survey team member?
And I can get that for you if you want specifics. I just feel like I'm talking to you generally for your question, so I will get that for you.
Representative Cross.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I'd like to inquire.
Proceed.
Thank you. I want to go back to the pathologist. When you send that fetal tissue to the pathologist, okay, and I'm assuming there's more than one location. Maybe I'm wrong. I'll let you correct me.
I don't know.
One agency, or you don't know where?
Are you talking about the St. Louis facility?
Well, I don't know. Is there more than one is there more than one facility when you send it to the pathologist? Right, the state of Missouri.
I don't send it to the pathologist. I don't. The state of Missouri doesn't. The clinic would.
Okay, so you would have the knowledge as far as where it would go from the clinic to the pathologist.
Well, we get the pathology report, so yes, we do know that it went from the clinic to the pathologist.
Okay, does it stay within the state of Missouri, or does it go to another state? Has it ever gone to another state?
I can't say ever. I don't think it currently goes to
The
another.
best of your recollection, it would be within the states, what you're saying.
Right.
Okay. Now, here we go. I was listening to Representative Lauer, and here's the question. Apparently, once when it goes to the pathologist, okay, then your oversight is basically is concluded. There's no other oversight. In other words, a pathologist report is not a part of the picture. Is that right, or correct me?
We receive the reports from the path labs.
Okay,
and they
okay.
go back to and they send one to the clinic that should appear in the medical record.
Okay, now I hope this question is not in the regs, but can you tell me what the turnaround time is?
I can find out.
You can find out. I would like to know.
Okay.
Thank you. Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
And did you say you said the facility in St. Louis, they send it all remains to a pathologist. Is it one pathologist? Is it 10? Is it 20? I mean, you have the reports, so you should have this information.
That's my understanding that it's one.
There's just one.
That's my understanding.
All right, and in these reports, is it documented that all the remains are there? Or is that not something that's?
The report looks at the tissue to determine.
So that's not, that portion is not in the report. Whether they get all of the remains or whether it is just partial or.
I don't think it's that.
So that information might not be in there. So you can't say for certain that all the remains are sent to the pathologist if the report doesn't say that it's not in the report.
I mean, you would have to talk to Planned Parenthood about that, but my understanding is all the remains go to the pathologist, and then the pathologist.
But that information is not in the pathologist's report.
Specifically, that all the remains came. I don't think so.
Representative Huber.
I have a question, and I'm sure it's very, very premature since the hearings have just begun. But with your experience with the Senate and then now this, is the department having any discussion about looking at the processes that are currently in place and evaluating those for transparency? Hopefully nothing like this ever occurs again once we get through this process. But can you comment on that?
With regards to the transparency question, it's state law that.
I'm not asking like patient confidentiality. I understand that, not mayor, but just on process.
And we will review our process. I can't say that we've started that, but we'll review our process.
At some point, there are plans.
We will review the process.
I do want to make this statement that we did ask Planned Parenthood to be here today, and it's probably where a lot of these questions could get a lot more thorough answers. in some senses, but they were unable to come and find it. My question is then, with medical abortions, is there still some of the tissue that is captured and sent to the hospital? Is there a pathology report for every abortion that's done?
I wouldn't think so for a medical abortion because I believe it's in the form of a miscarriage that happens at home.
So you said you would?
I would not think
would
there
not.
would be a pathology.
Okay, and so the clinics, as they are equipped for the procedures, then that the fetal tissue, the embryonic tissue, whatever, is captured in some way. Is there any regulation about what happens from those medical abortions? What happens with that tissue, that substance?
I don't know.
Okay, do you think that would be under, your department, the health?
If you're asking whether we require the individual to bring the fetal tissue back to the Planned Parenthood, I don't think we do.
Okay, so that may be disposed of at home, or?
I think it's very early on in the pregnancy when you can do a medical abortion.
Thank you.
Representative Kermit.
One more question.
Proceed.
Thank you. I want to follow up real quick with a question that the Senate asked. But I don't think we were able to answer at the time, relating to the licensing issue also in Columbia, and the requirements met for the doctor performing the abortions, whether or not they had their hospital admission privileges that requirement was met. The hospital, and what do you use to determine whether or not the requirements have been met? What documentation would you use for that?
The Columbia facility is only performing medical abortions, and we would look to see that the doctor had clinical privileges pursuant to Chapter 188. We would look to see that the doctor had staff privileges pursuant to our rep.
Okay, so you're looking at you're looking at more than one document then, to find out. You're looking at more than one piece of information to find out whether or not they've met.
Unless the document has that information in one document.
Okay, which would be what? Can you give me an example? I mean, what would it be like? What do you look for? And I don't know, I'm not a doctor, I've never been to medical school, I'm not familiar with it, so I'm interested to know.
I mean, I can't say specifically, I think we could look for a document from the hospital indicating that doctor had.
What hospital?
Okay, where I was at the Senate, but,
You have talked to legal counsel yet? Because I know that, and on the Senate side, in that hearing, that you needed to get some legal advice on answering that question. You haven't got that.
correct, but the hospital has stated in the media that they're the hospital.
Okay.
Representative Brown.
One final question. I like to think that we're all in this together and we all want to make sure that the laws in Missouri are followed. So therefore, if you know that the site, that the Planned Parenthood is sending it to a pathologist and there's no oversight of that, I would sure hope that you would come to us and say, this is something we need to address because we are not making sure that the law as stated is there. So I'm a little disappointed that that didn't occur. So do you think that it's something we should do? We should include that in the law that we say for pathology, that we understand exactly what they're doing with the body parts.
I would presume to tell you what to put in the law. I think that would.
But would you not say that that is an oversight? That we're not really doing what we should be doing if we're not doing that?
I think our concern is for the safety of the patient and the safety of the facility and.
But your concern should also be for what the law says and making sure that we're ensuring that the law is followed. That's really all I'm trying to say. Thank you.
You said, earlier you said that it goes to one pathology lab. Do you know the name of that facility or company? I mean, they're sending in thousands of these, reports into your department, and you said they all get sent to one.
That's my understanding.
But you don't know the name of this company?
Not as I sit here now.
All right. Representative Brimley.
To inquire.
Proceed.
If you don't have oversight, why does the pathologist even report back?
The law requires.
Okay, so you do not have oversight of that. Is that what you're saying? Okay. I thought you said you did.
I explained that we are in labs to inspect for CLIA, which is the federal regulation. And, but that's more along the lines of, is your staff trained to do the types of procedures that you're allowed to do?
Yeah, well, what hospital do they use?
I'm sorry?
What hospital do they use, the clinic, or the Planned Parenthood?
In Columbia, I think the university has said that it was that in the media.
Yeah, from what I'm hearing, correct me if I'm wrong, an abortion facility could sell body parts, which to me is appalling that we're talking about selling body parts, human beings. But they can sell body parts without you even knowing it.
I don't have any indication that that's happening in Missouri. And I
I know,
asked
but they could do that from what I'm gathering without you knowing it.
If the survey team saw nothing along those lines, I guess they could, but I think they do a pretty thorough job.
Yeah, but that's what I'm saying. I guess I can, but if we don't have all the parts and we don't have what we need, I just don't see where we can say that they're not selling parts. It's a yes or no question. What could they do this without you knowing it?
I suppose so.
Okay,
I
thank
don't
you.
have any indication that they are.
Proceed.
In following up with Representative Brimley, mentioned you have no reason to believe that they are selling baby body parts. By virtue of the inspections that you perform, and should be performing not just on abortion facilities, but all other facilities in the state that you oversee, it is possible then that there might be an oversight, and there could be some things happening without your knowledge. Is that correct?
I have to answer yes to that. I don't have knowledge of everything that goes on in Missouri. I think you would need to ask Planned Parenthood directly whether they're doing it.
Are you familiar with the laws of the land that regulate the gestational age of a baby, an unborn baby that can be taken from the mother in an abortion procedure?
I think so.
And what would that be?
I think they're in our information packet that we provided to the committee.
Can you say that for me?
I would have to refer to the packet.
Okay. It's becoming a little unbearable to me that you've been in a position for 2 years and without looking, understanding that some of the things are going to be new, but this should be something you would be able to know, being the director, and having some oversight of the survey teams that go out to these facilities and come back with reports that you can't reveal unless you get legal permission to do so. But what I'm driving at is that these are human beings, as Representative Brimley clearly pointed out. little babies that one day would be viable human beings. Can you tell me, I believe they're human beings already, that's a misstatement on my part. Can you tell me approximately how many live births we have in this state?
I think that's on our website.
Good.
We do keep those statistics.
Yeah, do you ever view your website?
Pardon?
Do you ever take a look at your website?
Yep.
Could you tell me approximately what those live births might be?
I have a look at the website.
Okay. Well, in 2009, they were a little over 78,000, 78,889, I believe. What are the instances that you believe that abortions are viable or necessary for the health of either the mother or the health and well-being of the baby?
I don't think it is real.
Okay. Mr. Chairman, may I defer a question to the doctor on our committee, please?
Sure.
Representative Neely, if you're able, can you tell me if there's a percentage of pregnancies that are considered high risk to the point where the mother's life might be in danger and a baby might need to be taken from her body so that the mother's life would be saved?
It's been 30 years since I delivered a child, so I'm not quite up to speed on all the latest information. But I would venture to say that in my time, I had a very small percentage of high-risk pregnancies, and I immediately moved those on down to someone who's more skilled than myself.
Would you say that it's less than 50%?
High risk?
Yeah.
Yes.
Would you say that it's less than 25%?
Yes.
Would you say it's less than 10%?
I'm not going to go there.
Okay. May I defer a question to Representative Hubert?
Sorry.
I'm going to press you a little bit, Representative.
Remember, I did oncology and long-term care in hospitals.
Okay, good.
I never birthed no babies other than the two I delivered.
Did you delve into any OBGYN materials while you were in your studies?
Yes.
Did you find any information on high-risk pregnancy?
Yes.
You remember any percentages that were touted?
No, I do not. I'm sorry.
Okay. Well, some of the medical, thank you very much for Dr. Neely too, thank you. Some of the medical professionals that I've asked questions of tell me that it's less than 1%, especially the OBGYN nurses that I've had relationship with. In this particular year that I'm looking at, 2009, 78,849 live births in Missouri. So of those pregnancies, and it doesn't discount those that were naturally not come to term and maybe ended early, but 1% of that would be 788. In that year, this stat, there were 10,815 babies aborted in the state of Missouri. I find that pretty hard to believe that all these were because of high risk. And I just wonder, as your survey team goes out to these facilities and are granting renewals or first-time certificates to licenses, do you look at their history of abortion procedures and compare these to high-risk pregnancies? Are there questions asked? Were these actually high-risk pregnancies? And the reason for these abortions to be done on these individuals?
I guess I'm confused by your question. Are you saying that abortion is only legal in Missouri for a high-risk pregnancy? Because I don't know
that's not my question. First, I asked you if you were familiar with the gestational age of an unborn baby to be taken, the latest term to be taken from the mother. And you said it was in the literature, but you couldn't cite that, even if it goes on the website and it's in the material. And so what I'm asking you is, when your department sends the survey teams out to these facilities to in the endeavor to renew their license, are you looking at the numbers of procedures, abortion procedures performed, and taking a look to see if they were really truly high-risk pregnancies, and was the mother's life truly in danger?
We look at a sampling of medical records, but I would say that not all of those would include high-risk pregnancy. They would maybe be in the category of abortions that are legal in Missouri at an earlier stage.
Do you think it would be prudent in the future to add this to your checklist, one that we would like to see, that states or that looks at those statistics to see whether or not those numbers are in line with what should be with high-risk pregnancies? And if a facility is performing a number that is much higher than what is expected, should that raise a red flag?
I can talk to my staff about that.
Do you think, in your opinion, that would be something that would be prudent to add to that checklist and to disseminate that to the staff so they would do that from this point on?
I would have to talk to my staff about whether or not that would, I mean, I don't know what all
You're
the
the director, for goodness sake. Can you not help guide them? Is that what a director does, to guide the department so that they are doing things that are feasible and prudent?
I will take your comments under consideration and talk to the staff about it.
And before I forget, there is a list of things that you said you don't know, and that's one of them. You'll have to get back to it. What are those items that you will get back to us on?
I'm hoping someone in the audience is writing this down.
Oh, so you have someone from your department?
I have Brett Fisher here from my department and the legislative manager.
All right. And just to echo some of the other comments, it would certainly be helpful to us all, because we don't want to be malicious. I certainly don't intend that, but it's extremely frustrating. It's extremely frustrating when someone who is representing a department, you've already been questioned on many of these before, and you still don't have the answers. It's extremely frustrating for us because you spend an hour and 15 minutes and don't have many of the answers that we were looking for. So hopefully next time we'll be better prepared. Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Representative Meredith.
Thank you. Permission to inquire. Okay, you've been asked a lot of questions, and I'm curious. I mean, the focus here is on the abortion providers. What percent of the healthcare that you oversee has to do with abortion?
Well, I have,
I guess.
I would guess, anyway, 2 abortion clinics in Missouri, and that's just one bureau within my department. I'd say less than 1%.
Okay, so about somewhere less than 1% of your job, maybe somewhere between 0.5% and 0.75% of your job deals with working with these 2 facilities out of 100 or hundreds of facilities in the state. Is that correct?
That's just a guess. I mean, I'm not
No,
discounting the importance of this. I am just saying that that is only one part of what I.
Right. It's one part of what you do, and thinking about it, I'm thinking maybe it's related to a superintendent of a school and being asked, what did the kid who sits in the 3rd row, 4 seats back in this room in his elementary school this afternoon? I mean, I know that these
No, this is a
questions
specific hearing on this topic. It's not like that at all.
These are very
She
important.
knew exactly what this hearing was about, and I think it only makes sense for her to, if she can't find an answer, she should be able to find an answer. And I think these are all legitimate questions. We know exactly what's going on in the department, and we're trying to provide some oversight.
Okay, well, I understand that, but I'm also thinking that the things that you are more aware of are the big picture, the 30,000-foot picture of what's going on in your department. Representative Moon was referring to high-risk pregnancies. Aren't those usually done in hospitals?
I think so, yes.
And the procedures that are done in the, say, Planned Parenthood clinics are more a matter of choice by the expectant woman.
That would be my understanding, yes.
Okay, so there's different reasons. It's not just because there's a high-risk pregnancy or whatever. There's this question of choice that the federal government allows us to have, correct?
Correct.
Okay. Well, thank you.
Representative Bryan.
To inquire. Proceed. First, we've heard a lot about the licensure and what goes on with, your checklist. Were you asking the Senate if you have a checklist for issuing these licenses?
I believe I was.
So how long has it been since that Senate hearing? Since you were at that Senate hearing?
Last week.
So I guess that's what I'm kind of confused. I mean, we've had a week and we come here knowing what questions are going to be asked and we still don't have a checklist. I mean, a lot of us have drove all several hours to come here, to try and do the people's business. And I feel that we're just being, stonewalled. And I think this is egregious.
I provided the documents that the committee requested specifically before the hearing. And
have you testified in these committees on any House or Senate committee prior to the past couple of weeks?
for budget purposes, yes.
Do you bring documents? Wants and needs, and you bring nothing there, only what they request.
I bring the budget book.
Okay. We were calling you here to talk about what? What specifically were you being called to this committee to talk in reference to?
Abortion facility, I guess.
Okay, so you come here, you bring nothing in regards to abortion facilities.
I brought the regs, I brought the statute.
No checklist of issuing licensure. I mean, I'm not trying to be disrespectful, man, but I mean, it's disrespectful of this committee that we've all come here to, and you're the director. This isn't just some staff member that's forgot his notes. But regardless, I'll move on. I do apologize for that. But we also, talked on the, what happens to the remains of these aborted children. And you said you saw no reason, or there were no, you saw no reason to, or need to inspect the end result of the remains. But, I know we're all here for the videos that we saw. We can sit here and roll our eyes or whatnot. But in the transcripts of the video, the first video release, I mean, they even said that if there's one place I'm going to look that's untapped in the entire United States for abortion and these body parts, was where?
St. Louis, Missouri.
So you come before this committee and you say that you see no reason when undercover videos are showing and stating that this is a fountain of youth for these type of grotesque parts.
I asked my staff when I saw that video if they had any reason to believe that fetal tissue donation or sale is happening in St. Louis, Planned Parenthood, and they said,
well, by your testimony, ma'am, you're not investigating it. I mean, you gave no recollection, and then you could not even respond to who's investigating what. So how can they?
they're the ones in the facility, and they're telling me that they didn't see any reason to believe that that was happening. We haven't received any complaints that that was happening, and
Representative Kelly.
To inquire,
Proceed.
Director, thank you for being here. Just curious, trying to remember, and I want to make sure I have this number correct. How many times have we successfully inspected the St. Louis facility in the past decade?
in the past decade.
Yes.
I know that we've done it while I've been the director, and it was not done under the Blunt administration, and it was not done at the beginning of this administration.
So it's been somewhere around 2 or 3 times in the last 10 years, correct?
I believe so.
Now, my question is, you know, you said upwards of 1,000 surgery centers, correct? Somewhere around, I mean, a lot. It doesn't matter if it's 100 or 1,000. What percentage of those, would you say they're the same? That most of those have only been inspected 2 times in the last decade?
I would have to get that information for you.
I would love to see the numbers, because here's my thought process. Most of these surgery centers have one goal in mind. Their goal is to make sure that the men and women that come there get the surgery that they need, and that they get mended and back to full health as quickly as possible. The difference with Planned Parenthood is their goal is to extract and terminate the life of a baby. So they've got a very different medical purpose versus healing, which is what most of those surgery centers have. Their goal is to destroy life. I would think that we would want our inspectors to be focusing on those facilities just to make sure that if we're going to do this procedure, which is legally allowed, even though under Missouri's laws, we do understand that that is a living human being. They're given that information before they make that decision. That Missouri law clarifies that it is a human being, but that mother has the right to terminate the life of that human being. But wouldn't it seem that that should be a huge priority? That your office, your people should be making that a #1. Every year we've got to inspect this to make sure that everything is up above board. It just seems like we're really dropping the ball here, and I just can't understand why. If you're doing other surgery centers that are operating on a knee, or, you know, all they do is do surgery on feet, and amazingly, you've had, you know, inspectors there every year, yet in a facility that's terminating human life 3 times or less in a decade, I think it's appalling. I appreciate the information, would love to see those numbers, and I have a feeling we're going to have to really reconsider appropriations on what your staff is doing and what they're inspecting. Thank you.
Representative Newman.
Yes, I just wanted to inquire of the chairs. Do we have other witnesses that have been scheduled to testify?
Yes.
I just have some concern about the time. I know that we're kind of like going off into some other tangents here.
Yes, we do have witnesses.
Thank you.
All right.
I
Oh,
have one question. Okay. I'm going to move over to the stem cell research question. The Secretary of State then receives those annual forms. Are they generated from your office, or where do those, you don't know?
I don't know. We don't generate those forms.
Okay, all right. Is there anything in your department that you have that you regulate or you do in relationship to the stem cell research?
Not that I know of.
Okay. All right, I appreciate that. Let me see. I probably have a couple other questions. Well, will you remain in the room, and if we need to come back with to you, ask some more questions, would you be here for?
I can take a break.
Yeah, I bet you do. All right, thank you very much.
Thank you.
Yeah.
is it possible that you could find answers to any of these items that we've asked you and come back in a couple hours, or do you want to wait for our next hearing? All right. Is Jennifer?
How are you?
My name is Jennifer Tidball, and I'm the Deputy Director of the Department of Social Services. Our director was invited to be here today, and he would have, but he's actually taking his daughter to college today, so that's why he's with us today. So I'm here to answer any questions that the community may have.
Okay. Representative Allen.
Joan Clark. Good afternoon, Jeff. Okay, so you may know where I'm going. So we do have federal dollars going through Medicaid.
Yes, Representative. There are 4 Planned Parenthood facilities in the state of Missouri that are Medicaid providers.
So as far as any oversight, any audits, any knowledge, any hard knowledge of the ways that the Medicaid dollars are spent, implemented in Missouri in these Planned Parenthood facilities. Have we had audits? Who audits? Do feds come in and audit? Does our auditor do that? And I want to make sure we haven't had any of the audits show that we don't get the matches and all that.
So, Representative, to start with your question, who would audit? We actually in the Department of Social Services have an audit body for Medicaid that's separate from the Rural Health Net Division. It stands under the Director's Office, and that's the Missouri Medicaid Audit Compliance Team. So they would be responsible because our interaction with Planned Parenthood would be related to looking at them as a Medicaid biller. So whether or not they're billing appropriately and that the services they bill for are allowable under the Medicaid program and for individuals who are actually eligible for the program, the Medicaid program. So I did go back and look at what recent audits that Missouri Medicaid audit clients have done around Planned Parenthood, and the most recent was in 2012, and it was actually for the Kansas City facility. To just step back a little bit, most of our audits come from either we're getting some kind of a complaint, either written, a phone call, maybe even a constituent of yours, you know, or another representative or a member of the General Assembly has had a concern, or we are continuously looking at billing patterns to see whether or not there's something that could, what looks like an anomaly and something we want to go and check out. This particular audit, it was in response to what we call a sweep. So we had a particular facility, another provider that we were looking at, or a handful of providers in a certain area, and we chose just to bring in the Planned Parenthood as another facility to review because we were in the vicinity and we wanted to do as much as we could when we were in the vicinity of that state. So that's that last time. And to answer your question, kind of what were the findings, we reviewed, I believe, about $55,000 in claims. It was for the calendar year, or actually ran from July 2010 through June 2011, so that would have been fiscal year 2011. And of that, we found about $2,200 and $53,000 we didn't think was allowable.
Disallowable?
Yes.
Okay.
And that money was repaid by the Planned Parenthood in the summer of 2013. To give you an idea of what the disallowables or what was unallowable, most of the unallowable was related to in the Medicaid program. There's a particular program called Women's Health Services. It was created in statute under Senate Bill 577, usually back in 2007. And it's a very limited women's health benefit, much family planning benefit. And when I looked at the data, what I saw was really there was some services for those individuals that Planned Parenthood was billing for that really we weren't supposed to pay for them under the limited benefit that we were covering. So they should have been billing us for those services. And that was the majority. There were a couple of claims where there just wasn't documentation in the file to support the claim. But it was typical things that when I talked to our MAC staff, our Missouri Medicaid Audit Compliance staff, they're kind of typical billing errors that we find. And that's the most recent audit, and that's the one when I ask folks to pull information that.
Okay, and so basically, and you're familiar with FQHCs, federally qualified health centers. Do the FQHCs provide the services that Planned Parenthood provides minus abortion?
We have many, FQHCs would just be one of many providers that would provide family planning services.
So we have many.
There are numerous providers. So I think, you know, to give you an idea, our family planning costs that we claim to the federal government, if you don't look at managed care, are around $20 million, and we provide much less of that payment than that, around $300,000 to $400,000 a year in fee-for-service to Planned Parenthood. So there are many more providers that provide family planning than just Planned Parenthood.
So say if Planned Parenthood wasn't around, we could certainly meet we might need to strengthen some areas of the state, but we could definitely meet the numerous needs of women's health in every way but abortion.
I don't believe it would be an access issue. I did share with Helen's staff, there was a question around whether or not Planned Parenthood could be excluded as a provider if they chose not to be excluded, and that's a different question I think that you're asking.
Okay. Thank you.
All right, so there's, Planned Parenthood gets basically through two different pots of money. You have Medicaid, and then that other pot is through Title X.
No, I want to make it clear, when I talk about family planning funding, it's under Title 19, so it's under Medicaid. It just gets an enhanced match. So our typical, the typical of $1 that we spend on Medicaid costs, typically you get about 64 cents of federal money. On a family planning claim, you get about 90 cents. So, but it's all Title 19. We don't do any Title 10.
And does Missouri have discretion to exclude certain providers in Medicaid, or?
There, we are able to, so we are able to exclude providers for cause. So there's a process that we could go through that if they aren't, so Missouri Medicaid Audit Compliance, if we go through and for cause, that there's due process. So there's a.
But not because that facility or that organization does abortions necessarily. We wouldn't be able to discriminate.
That's our understanding from the information that that we researched.
Do you know if other states do this?
I am aware of other states who have recently come out and said that they plan to exclude Planned Parenthood as a Medicaid provider. I frankly don't know how they're doing that, and I would expect that they would be receiving a letter from CMS. And I did provide to Helen the lawsuit or a court case. It was in Indiana back in 2011, Planned Parenthood versus the state of Indiana, and I think the decision was that the freedom of choice regulation under Medicaid would mean that Indiana could not exclude Planned Parenthood as a provider where they in good standing as a provider of the state.
See, I mean, I look at it this way: if you have an organization that's doing abortions, although they may not be getting paid for that abortion, their overhead gets paid. So I mean, I run a construction company. I do painting and I do roofing. If under one pot they said, all right, a customer says, all right, you're not paying for roofing, but I'm paying for painting. Well, that still pays for my overhead that allows me to do my roofing. And so I think it's outrageous that we wouldn't be able to exclude them.
All I can do is just tell you what we believe would happen. So.
Well, I think if you get 25 states doing this, what are they going to do? Cut off funding for 25 states?
I just have to say representative.
Okay, and I wanted to ask you then about the billing, the charges. So is it a bundle? Do they bill and you pay that process? Is it a bundle charge that includes individual procedures or lab or ultrasound path? What do they bill you for? And how do you pay? If you pay individually, yeah.
So Planned Parenthood in general could bill us for many items. So they bill us a lot for like contraceptives, so an IUD. I think of it, the Depo-Provera, a lot of pap smears, STD testing. So there's office visits. But it would be by like individual service.
Okay, so there's a code.
Yes.
For each of the services that are provided. Is there anything that's bundled together? And I guess this makes me think about the path. We were kind of inquiring about whether the pathologists that receive then the unborn babies, if there was, how they were paid for their services as you in the past. So can you help me with that?
And so I am not aware of any bundled services. I'm going to look back. I have some Medicaid staff here that, and I thought the answer was no, but I wanted to verify. So I think the question that we received yesterday was asking whether or not we would pay a pathologist. And so when you have an abortion occur that we approve that's allowable based on exception under the Hyde Amendment, then we would pay for the abortion. If at that time then it was sent to a pathologist and the pathologist billed us, we would pay that as a separate code. But we do not pay for, we don't have a special code for the disposal of any remains after that. We don't pay for that.
Okay, okay. Then I guess, is there a pathologist for that and then a pathologist for the CLIA and the other things that are they separate entities? You know?
I don't know, and I will just say, when we got this question yesterday, we couldn't look at all of our records yesterday afternoon, but I was just interested to see whether or not we saw some pathology billing around the time of the abortion that we had paid for. And we only found one where there had been a pathologist that had billed. Doesn't mean that there wasn't a service that was provided, but we didn't receive a bill. But we looked within a month. Now it would have taken us quite a bit longer, but we looked in a month of the date of the particular abortion, so the date of the service, and we didn't find any. And because we aren't specific on our pathology coding, it could have been a biopsy for the mother, for example, too. So we don't, without actually going in and looking at the records, we wouldn't be able to know, frankly, whether or not that it was a billing for the purpose of evaluation of the.
Okay. Representative Allen asked about the FQHCs that provide the services now that are paid for. Do health departments, do they receive reimbursement, or do you pay health departments for any of these services for women's health?
I don't know if they're Medicaid providers.
Are they Medicaid providers?
I don't know. I looking to see. The answer is yes.
The answer is yeah. Okay. Okay, could you talk a little bit more about the Title 19? What that is and how what that pays and how that's utilized?
So Title 19 is we all know the Medicaid program in Missouri, and Title 19 under the Social Security Act is actually the federal funding received for the Medicaid program. So that's.
And it has a family planning?
Yes, it does have a family planning component to it. And family planning is actually required service. So in Medicaid, we talk about optional and mandatory services. So what a state has to cover to have a Medicaid program and what they can choose not to cover. And yeah, family planning is a Title 19 required.
So we must have facilities that will accept Medicaid and provide those services.
Yes.
And they're reimbursed, you said, at a higher rate.
The family planning services are reimbursed at what we call 90/10. So for every dollar, 90 cents comes from the federal government, which in comparison for a typical Medicaid claim, for every dollar, we get about 64 cents from the federal government.
Okay. Are there other questions for this witness? Representative
To inquire, is there any expectation of compliance of the clients with family planning strategies, compliance of, okay, the facility provides, say, birth control. But if someone chooses or is not compliant, then they can move forward and abort that baby.
Well, we don't have any requirement from the participant as to what they choose to do should they become pregnant. Even if we have funded the birth control through the family, the Title 19 family plan.
So we have no metrics on that.
I doubt that those facilities are looking at, who they provided birth control through through Medicaid family planning, and how many of those women chose to abort a child. I can't tell you if that
So
was
the
a
department has no metrics
that.
on the outcomes based on this Medicaid dollars.
We would not have a metric, so I do not believe on the number of abortions that occur from women who received contraceptives that were funded with Title 19 family planning.
Would you expect the providers, any provider?
I don't
Ideally,
know. I would have to
they
ask
would,
that question. I don't know.
Okay. Thank you.
I guess I've got a printout, a piece of information here that is provided to me, and it says DSS net expenditures for services provided. It has a pharmaceutical category and a physician category. So is that primarily how it's broken out?
Right. It would be mostly what we would pay for, or what would be claims that would be from Planned Parenthood would either be kind of pharmacy related, or they would be physician, so office visits, clinic type services.
Okay. And the majority of that pharmaceutical would be contraceptives?
It's mostly contraceptive, and I did kind of take a look at the breakout, and about half of it is the two major costs, because Planned Parenthood doesn't dispense like a 28 days worth of birth control pills. They don't do that. So most of the cost that we pay for, so most of the costs were either related to IUDs or they were related to contraceptive shots. Okay. There were some other things in there, antibiotics and things like that, but most of the costs were related to those two types of contraceptives.
Because they do treat STDs?
Yes, they do.
Okay, and then the physician services, did you take a look at Steve?
Most of them were office visits, so, that just built an office visit, but there would be also procedures. So when I mentioned about pap smears or STD testing, some of those items, they would be under the physician's one, the physician section, those costs.
Okay, but there's not really a lab charge, or is that for?
I don't recall seeing a lot of lab charges. No, I don't recall there being specific lab charges, like when I looked at the billing for the claims side.
Okay. And how many years have you been with the department?
18 or 19. Quite a while.
Quite a while, yes, absolutely. Let's see, so the audits, the Medicaid audits are really done either at the bequest of Medicaid or themselves, or is that something that the state, your department decides needs to be done?
As far as the audit, I mean, that we may hear something from the federal agency, but typically what happens with Missouri Medicaid audit compliance is, again, we're running and looking at reports and doing surveillance all the time to determine whether or not we see some billing that doesn't look quite right, or if we receive particular concerns from constituents, phone calls from other healthcare providers. That happens some, but that's typically where the focus is.
Okay, and I'm sorry. Oh, go ahead.
So what's the average amount of fraud or misbilling or that you find?
So, I don't know if I have the dollar amount. I can get that for you. I know
Is there
we
like a
have a
percentage?
report. I don't want to misspeak. I can give you an idea of the number that we use. So I took a look. We did about 3,800 in fiscal year 2005 as far as audits, and that would be based on having about 50,000 providers. And during that time, we actually terminated for calls about 10. So, or no, I'm sorry, about 30. So that gives you an idea if we were terminating for calls. And I'd be happy to get the committee information on what we found as far as incorrect billings. I mean, some of those end up at the AHC, and sometimes they end up if there's some kind of a negotiation that goes on to settle the claim. And I'll get you that for you.
And then you talked a little bit about, and I'm going to ask you to repeat it, about there were some disallowed with the Planned Parenthood providers. Could you go over that again?
Sure. So that was Planned Parenthood, actually Eastern Kansas and then Missouri, but the audit was done in the Kansas City location. And again, I think we reviewed between 53,000 and 54,000 claims. That would have been their claims over a year. It would have been fiscal year 2011. And from that, we found about $2,300 that we didn't think were allowable claims. And we requested that the agency repay those, and they did write a check and repay that amount. Like I said, typically what I saw in the audit is typical of what we see in other audits. So there was no intent for fraud. It just seemed like maybe kind of sloppy billing. And so what we found were in most cases the woman was eligible for a limited benefit under Home Health Net. So she was eligible for some services, but some of the services that they were billing for, she wasn't eligible for at all. The only coverage she had in Mo Health Net was women's health family planning. So they were all procedure codes, so I didn't look at those, but that was typically what we found. There were a couple where either the data service didn't match up with the documents that we found in the facility, or we did not believe adequate documentation to support payment of the claim. So that gives you an idea of what makes up that $2,300.
How do you do that? What do you run a program, or someone physically goes through and looks, or how
someone physically you do a sampling, so we know what claims were paid for what individuals, and so we go in and we ask for the records. We go to the location. Yes. And so we ask for the records to be pulled and look at documentation, just to determine whether or not that documentation is adequate to support them billing Medicaid for that cost. And if it's adequate, it's passes muster. If it's not, then it's brought back to the agency, and some that we will request that back if they can't produce documentation to support the claim.
So were there any of those that they came back and said, oh, we brought the documentation? Did they?
I believe that there were some, but that's pretty typical. Also, that providers would come back with documentation. So it really wasn't out of the ordinary.
Okay. All right, any other questions about this really interesting topic of auditing and claims and disallows? All right, thank you.
And I would like to just say one thing. I'd like to thank our last witness for actually answering questions.
All right, one of my favorite people in the whole world, Dr. Parks, would you come up and join us?
You're at the ready, aren't you?
At the committee's disposal. I'm at the committee's disposal for Parks Director Wilhelm.
Thank you very much for being here today, Dr. Parks. We want to know kind of the same goal, the same ground in some ways as we just did with Missouri Health Net payments to Planned Parenthood. Am I on the right? Did I articulate that correctly?
Sounds correct to me.
All right, very good. You're willing to answer those questions?
I'll do my best, and I will come
Okay,
back
thank you.
with answers later.
Thank you very much. Representative Allen.
To inquire, and thank you for coming. So as we heard from Jennifer, and can you just, from where you sit, give us an understanding of, well, first of all, as far as MMAC, do they function upon referral, or do they go out and hunt for compliance?
It would be best to ask them that question.
Okay. Well, I hope we'll do that another day too. Okay. So from your perspective, as far as, and I guess one of the things had to do with the women's health services, and how we can provide those women's health services efficiently as needed. And you like the FQHCs?
Yes, I think they're excellent providers.
And others, do you have any other providers that would be key players?
I think the other two major provider groups are the three others. There's the rural health centers. They're statewide. We have more rural health centers than any other state. Then there are the hospital-based clinics. Hospitals have been buying up outpatient practices like crazy. So a lot of what used to be independent practices are now hospital-owned practices. There are still a fair number of independent small practices out there. Those are the four major groups.
Okay. And so those other groups provide basically the gamut of Medicaid, women's health services that Planned Parenthood does, with the exception of abortion.
I believe that's correct, yes.
Okay, so like a tubal ligation, do we fund those tubal ligations?
I don't believe that we fund voluntary sterilizations. I would have to check with my staff about that.
Okay. Well, and at one point I was at a meeting years ago that within them, and maybe, it would be different fee-for-service versus managed care. I think the regs could offer, because I was under impression that within a managed care population, that could be covered. Do you have any awareness?
Managed care plans have discretion to cover something that's not in the general benefit in lieu of, meaning if they think it would better serve a person's medical condition and avoid some more expensive procedure, they could pay for that instead. The example they commonly give is we will buy them an air conditioner to keep them from having an asthma attack that sends them to the ER. That in lieu of applies to everything. In general, I don't think they would cover something like tubal ligation if fee-for-service did not. Let me look at my staff for a minute and say if they know if we do voluntary sterilization.
Okay, thank you.
We do. We do.
Thank you, and I appreciate you having your staff here to help answer those questions.
I should have looked at them before I answered you.
No problem. You can't be 100% perfect, so now I'll remember that one.
One time.
Yes. Okay. So, as far as well, I guess Jennifer told us about the compliance from what, do you have any different perspective as far as Planned Parenthood compliance, audits from your
compliance with regulations, or do you mean patient compliance with taking their contraceptives?
Well, I was going to get to the other one too. Okay, so compliance of implementation of Medicaid dollars through Planned Parenthood by our state, or by Planned Parenthood as a provider.
We do pay them as a federally mandated provider. The bulk of the payments are for sexually transmitted diseases and contraceptive services. The abortion payments are tiny compared to that. When they give us a valid claim, we make a payment for an eligible person. The abortions are 100% individually case reviewed. Everyone is looked at by our obstetrician.
And that obstetrician is like one of your staff then, or is that?
He's a full-time employee of the department, yes.
Great, okay. And to go to the compliance with, for the family planning, do you have any idea about those client, what do you call it, client, maybe client?
If they're in clinic, I call them patients. If they're in the program, I call them participants.
Okay.
Depends on where I find them.
So that participant for the compliance of their compliance with a family planning service.
You know, if it's compliance with oral contraceptives, I think it would probably be on a par of our compliance with all the other chronic medications people take ongoing, which means we'll probably take them about 60% of the time. We certainly prefer and would rather see them rely on IUDs and implantables, because once that's implantable or the IUD's in, it's in, and you don't have to worry about compliance anymore.
Okay. Do you have anything to fill us in on? We had a question about liability. Do you have I know you're a psychiatrist, right?
That's right.
So I shouldn't ask you that.
I would prefer not. I might have to refer to one of my staff for that.
Do we have anyone here who could give us some reasonably accurate information regarding viability?
My medical director, Dr. Mustafa, is here.
It's about 22 to 24 weeks.
22 to 24 weeks. Years ago, I had a baby I saw as physical therapist, and I remember this baby had been 1.25 pounds, and I think it was about that 24-weeker, and I figured that you look at 5 sticks of butter. So I know technologically we keep them, people who are trying to save babies can save them at a much younger gestational age. But, all right, so you said 22 to 24.
Treating babies at that age is certainly the correct thing to do. It is phenomenally expensive, and the long-term outcomes are not always good.
They're questionable, yes, I appreciate that. Okay, thank you, Madam Chairman.
Inquire. Thank you. Dr. King. What we're concerned with today is the body parts, and are they indeed leaving? Do you understand the terminology, the report construction of a pathologist report?
Yes, yes, sir.
In that report, do they or do they not start off with the patient appears to be age-wise, height, weight, amputees, various different things as they start the report?
I have not seen, I cannot remember ever reading the report for an infant or a fetus. Certainly the adult reports that I've read by way of doing a mortality review of adult patients have that description.
Would it be a conclusion on our part or an assumption to assume or conclude that the same report structure would be used for the fetus?
That I don't know. I don't know if the pathologists take a different approach to fetuses than they do to born people that are fully developed.
Okay, so you talk about when you do your patient review and everything, do you follow up with the transfer of any of the fetuses, or what happens to them after?
No, that's not part of the mode health med review. Our review focuses on, do they meet the Hyde Amendment criteria such that we should pay for them? So we're strictly about, are they a legitimate service that we should pay for under federal law?
All right, now, thank you very much.
Other questions? Let's see. I'm going to ask you, is there a family planning, within managed care, is there a family planning code that they use where there's a bundle of services that are all put together?
No, I don't believe so. They use the individual medical codes that are used in general medical practice. They would usually bill for a standard outpatient visit. If they do a surgical procedure like taking off a general ward, that would be destruction of a penile lesion or destruction of a bulbar lesion. So they have the same codes that they would use in general medical practice.
Yeah, okay. Very good. I think that's it. I don't have any other questions. Anyone else does? Is there anything you'd like to add?
No, if you have more questions, we'll come back and answer them
All
to
right.
the best of our ability.
All right, thank you very much. Thank you for being here today. And then, let's see, I think we kind of skipped over, we had Joel Anderson. Is Joel Anderson here today? No?
Yes.
Yes? Oh, yeah. Yes, there, I'm sorry, you're behind us. Okay. Thank you for being here today. I know that the day is getting long, and appreciate you being here. Now, would you give us, tell us who you are and what you do?
Joel Anderson, I'm the General Counsel of Social Services.
For Social Services. All right, thank you very much for being here today. I guess that you've heard our frustration that we have many questions that we're asking that we're not obtaining the answers to. And even when it would appear to us that there would be preparatory time between what's happened in the Senate and now we're over here in the House pursuing the same information. Can you tell us how that happens, why that happens?
I'm not sure I understand your question.
Heard
some of the questions, pardon me?
Are you referred to by the department head for legal advice?
Yes, I am the General Counsel of the Department of Social Services, yes.
For social services,
Social
okay.
services.
Oh, I'm sorry, not for health, okay. Well, let me see, if I have any, okay, yes, thank you. Thank you.
Be quiet, please.
You may.
Counselor, would it be your opinion, or would you assume that the courts would conclude that a pathology report of a invasive nature of the fetus would be privileged in any way. That individual, there is no person, no name, no, I mean, there's no foundation to find any other information other than the condition of that fetus.
I think I might frustrate you just a little bit.
I'm hoping you can, give me a direction to go.
Well,
Find this information.
As the lawyer for social services, I do render opinions on the law when legal questions arise. I don't render legal opinions at large. So I think I would be remiss to, well, first of all, try and advise the committee on what the law is, although I could speak to cases, I might point.
Well, I mean, I understand we could do some subpoena work, we could do, get with the various investigative agencies and ask them for subpoenas, for various different things to do. But if we were to ask a state entity that receives those reports to bring those forth so we could see if there's missing body parts, would you find that a conflict, or would you advise your client not to do that without a subpoena?
Let me see if I can address your question without violating any ethical rule of mine, or my profession, I should say. I would certainly look to see if a Missouri statute or a federal statute or some regulation spoke to the issue. And we do have statutes that make certain things confidential. We have statutes that make certain information closed. If we receive a subpoena from the legislative body, I think we need to respond to that. We need to respect it just like any other subpoena. If there's a statute that says you aren't entitled, or it appears to say that you aren't entitled to something that you're asking for, then the proper procedure legally is to refer that to a judge. You put your question in the statute in front of the judge, and the judge would say, fine. I don't think it's the discretion of anyone in the executive branch to deliberately, at least in their view, violate the statute. And I'm not saying
And we don't know if there's any case law set down for this particular issue, so we're going to do some soul searching and see where we want to go with getting the information we're going to need. I thank you for the insight. Appreciate it.
I hope it was helpful.
It was. Thank you.
Are there any other questions for this witness? Seeing none. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
I do have to backtrack just a little bit and ask those that have testified to fill out a witness form. Thank you. They're on the desk here. Thank you.
Committee stand at ease just for a moment.
All the time that are in it is on my it's all else.
Me? I'm not doing it.
I don't know.
Where you going?
Eat peanut butter cups.
I don't want anything, no thanks.
You gotta have to hide stuff in here. Yeah. I can have it.
I better go check my voicemail.
It's a medical thing. There's no blood pressure. I have peanut butter cups.
I think government is to keep.
Yeah.
He would have brought me here, he had a business.
Well, like here we have it. Yeah. If you look up the class,
My husband was doing that, he was, that's what I left.
I think she has ulterior motive when she comes to the
But that's my husband was going to give me about 6 That's what kind of train this is. So when the train comes,
I have a sofa in my office.
If I go to the train station, is there some place where I can park my car? Because I've never gone to the train station to park my car. I can park at my friend. That way he doesn't have to walk. Hey, if he's gonna take the train to drive me home, I will go to the door.
So you come back to Kansas City, same day?
Just going on to the other places.
Twice a day, right?
Yes.
But it used to go 7 and 7.
He liked in the morning, do this, do that. So he does it session.
All right, we're back. All right, this is what we're gonna do. We have this hearing until 5 o'clock. We are gonna take some public testimony. So obviously, we don't have a lot of time, but we will have more public testimony at our next meeting, and it'll be planned, we'll have a lot of time. We didn't necessarily plan to take public testimony today, but we're going to. So can I just get a show of hands in the audience of who might want to testify today? All right, well, all right. There's a few. All right, go ahead and come forward.
Dr. How are you today?
I'm fine, thank you.
Thank you. Will you tell us, did you fill out your witness form? Thank you very much. Okay. Give us your name and occupation and proceed.
I'm Ed Weisbart. I'm a family physician. I was trained in Flint, Michigan from 1979 to 1982. There's a possibility that I delivered a Representative Kirkland. Do you remember me? Does this help?
We're not sure whether to say thank you or.
That's me after the hearing. So anyway, I've practiced for 35 years, including obstetrics the first 10 years of my practice. And I'm getting the sense y'all don't really care too much for Planned Parenthood. Is that probably a safe assumption?
Some of us feel that way, but not all of us.
Not all of us, that's good. So I applaud the honesty of those of you who think abortions are wrong. Those of you who come out and said that you think this is a bad thing and it should be stopped. I applaud the honesty of saying that. And I would suggest without a bill that makes it illegal. And you're not probably going to do that because you know the people of Missouri would not support that.
Doctor, I'm going to stop you just for a second. Would you go ahead and give us a little bit more, you're the assistant professor.
I'm an assistant professor at Washington University, School of Medicine. I was chief medical officer at Express Scripts for 8 years. I'm still on volunteer faculty at WashU, but I do not in any way speak for Washington University or for Express Scripts or any of those organizations. I'm here entirely speaking on my own. I in no way represent those organizations.
Okay, and you have your doctor's coat on, and what does it say?
It's my practice at Washington University, so it's from there.
It's from there, but you're not speaking for Washington University.
I absolutely do not speak for Washington University.
Okay, so you're speaking for yourself only?
That is correct. I'm speaking for myself as a physician who practiced for 35 years.
Okay. All right, and you want to talk to us about Planned Parenthood or the services that they provide, or what is it?
Well, I wanted to comment that you started off the hearing by, somebody suggested that we all take oaths, the witnesses, so that we know that we're being honest. And I just wanted to say I applaud the honesty of those who said what they did, but for the most part, I think this whole hearing process is based on a series of lies. And it drives me insane that our legislature would spend their time in this blatant witch hunt rather than just make the policy decisions that they want to make. I am offended that you want to put a big hand of government in my practice and in medical care, and it drives me crazy that you're willing to do that you're willing to tell women who have a legal right to something that they need to have all kinds of things done to interfere with that. This is their legal right, and it's part of standard medical care, and yet you're wanting to do things that are just not appropriate.
Right, but you understand that the hearing, the committee is called together because of, the video presentations of fetal tissue possibly, well, definitely being talked about as for sale. And in those presentations, WashU, St. Louis, the Planned Parenthood in St. Louis was mentioned. And I don't think there's anyone who would think that the sale of fetal body parts is ethical.
So that video, I wonder how many people have watched the full video, which I have. The video was clearly produced by an organization that was created to produce videos like that. It was done with false identifications. It was based on lies and badly edited to create a message that could then justify having hearings of this nature. And you guys are taking advantage of the material they gave you. There is no evidence that any of those things are going on, and yet the third thing that you said was the reason for the committee to be going on was for anything else that the committee finds out and wants to pursue. Yeah. So you're having what could be almost completely defined as a witch hunt or a fishing expedition.
You said there's no evidence. Are those not Planned Parenthood executives on those videos?
That was someone talking and taken grossly out of context. And
there was not, I read the entire transcript, it was not taken out of context. They blatantly admit to these things on the videos, and they absolutely should be investigated because they'd be, if what is on the video is happening in our state, would be a violation of state and federal law.
There's no basis to think that it's occurring in this state or anywhere.
That is ridiculous. All right. They openly admit that these activities are happening in this country. So
they openly admit that they get reimbursed per legal requirements for the costs of their transportation. I'm not intimate with their process, but they openly admit publicly that they're reimbursed for what's appropriate for the cost of the work that they've done, the transportation, storage, and those things, which is legal, that's completely legal, and it's appropriate. And that research is the foundation for new vaccines, for diabetes care, for cancer care. And if we want to get in the way of that, I would submit anybody who gets in the way of that kind of important embryonic stem cell research a file that they won't partake of any of those life-saving treatments that are going to be coming out of it as you get older.
President Kirkman, proceed.
When all this news first started to break, I saw little bits and pieces of the video. I really didn't want to watch the whole thing end to end. But then I realized we were having this committee, and I took it upon myself to study up, read the transcripts, watch the video, read some other information that was sent out to us. And right when all this started to break, okay, my wife is at 22 weeks with our first child. And it kind of struck me as, for any defense of what we saw in the video to be rather disingenuous, because you're right. The current law allows for people to be recuperated or reimbursed for this practice, which I don't agree with at all in the first place, but you're right, it's the law. However, in the video and when you read the transcripts, they clearly negotiate price, and it starts with an official from Planned Parenthood asking how much the buyers are used to paying. That is not a reimbursement. That, and I'm from the business, from the finance world, that is a negotiation for somebody who's looking for extra considerable consideration, valuable consideration, which is clearly against our laws. So the fact that we're having a committee, because the questions have been raised that there might be wrongdoing and we need to get to the bottom of it, is clearly within the jurisdiction of both the legislature, every member of this committee, and the state of Missouri just across the board. So that's what we're doing here. And from time to time, we do get a little frustrated when other officials don't answer questions. But obviously, we have other people who have been very cooperative, and they come forward and haven't had to sit up here very long at all. But it is within our jurisdiction, and it is within the confines of everything that we're called to do, and this committee is called to do for this order, because the video itself clearly demonstrates that there are serious questions that need to be asked. And so on behalf of the constituents of my district who elected me because of my stance and because of the due diligence that I'm willing to put into matters like this or other matters, we need to follow through with commitments that we make as elected representatives. And I think that it's perfectly appropriate for us to be here asking these questions. And it's not a witch hunt. There are questions that need to be asked, and quite frankly, there are questions that need to be answered. Thank you.
Representative Newman.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Thank you, Dr. Weisbart, for being here and giving us some, a medical expertise. Want to ask you, in your practice or just in your medical work, do you deal with facts?
Well, that's the thing. It's much like the legislature should. Medicine is based on evidence and facts. And that's what the legislature should be basing on. And absolutely, facts, evidence, best practice is the way you should be practicing.
And according to your knowledge, again, as a medical person with expertise, is a fact that Missouri Planned Parenthood does not participate in any type of tissue donation?
I have no intimate knowledge of that, but from what I've read in the public press, it's a fact that even in the video, that Planned Parenthood in St. Louis or anywhere in Missouri does not participate in those things.
Into tissue donation?
Into tissue donation, correct.
And is it, according to your knowledge, is in Missouri, is embryo donation, is that legal?
I'm not intimate with the knowledge with the statutes on this.
I don't believe we do have a statute on this, but but to go further then is embryonic stem cell research. Is that legal? Are we able to do that in Missouri?
My understanding is that there was a law passed in the mid-2000s that made embryonic stem cell research.
Well, actually, it's a constitutional amendment, and I believe our chairs actually passed that information out this morning. So according to the constitutional amendment that the voters approved in 2006, we can do embryonic stem cell research. Okay, now, can you explain to this committee the difference between embryos and fetuses in terms of, your medical expertise?
Sure. Embryos, when you get very early in the pregnancy, when a woman is a week late on her period, she has a miscarriage, there are often products of conception there. She doesn't mourn that. She doesn't bury that. She doesn't have a religious ritual over that. So at the beginning of pregnancy, it's clearly not something that humanity recognizes as a meaningful human life. At the end of pregnancy, near term, that's a fetus, and of course that is 36 weeks. I don't know where the cutoff point is, but that's certainly we heard 20 to 24 weeks. I think we heard a little earlier. That's a viable fetus. In between there's a gray zone. The definition is below 8 weeks. 8 weeks and below is considered an embryo, and above that is considered fetal. And research in the state of Missouri is legal by a constitutional amendment up to that point.
So, and I think we also know, and again, this has not even come up in this committee, but people are able to, in Missouri, there's no prohibition, as far as you know, to donate those embryos. Again, now we're talking up to 8 weeks. And obviously we have seen, read, whatever, that these embryos are coming mostly through fertility clinics and people donating their additional embryos they did not need. That is legal as far as we know. There is no law to prohibit that. And yet Planned Parenthood is not doing any of that.
That's correct.
They're not doing any of that because the majority of the abortions that are happening are actually after 8 weeks when it's now considered a fetus medically, correct?
It is correct.
Okay, so we've got that those facts out of the way. In terms of facts, would you agree with what I've seen, maybe from your expertise?
Hey, hold on. Can I get a raise of hands with anybody that still wants to testify? Okay, all right. I'm just making sure. Continue.
Thank you. That 1 in 3 women in this country have an abortion? is an abortion something that most women count
Hey,
on?
we're getting,
I mean, we're talking about abortion.
we're getting a little bit off topic. I'll come
Well, I
back.
could get back on topic,
Go ahead.
if I could. You brought up the question of whether we could handle the primary care that Planned Parenthood does in other systems. That was one of the questions you brought. So obviously you're thinking about trying to shut down Planned Parenthood because of this part of their work. And I would submit to you that that is you putting your hands into women's lives and telling them that you don't think these are good providers. They should have the right to decide where they want to go. They're going there because they find they get the most compassionate, decent, quality, accessible care.
I do have one question.
Try to cut them off is crazy.
Did you come testify against, the Affordable Care Act or some of these other intrusions into medicine?
I've testified on more than one thing, as some of you have probably heard.
Doctor, I mean, I've been reminded that we don't have a lot of time left. Of course, we have the room until 5 o'clock. But I wanted to get back to these facts. I mean, this committee, we have spent a lot of time today, actually kind of all over the map in terms of Planned Parenthood, in terms of, stem cell research. We've talked about funding. We've talked about pathology labs. I mean, we've talked about many things that are actually available online. We can find a lot of these answers ourselves in terms of even some of these handouts. But you have heard, along with myself, that we've talked a lot about abortion. Many of these of my members here on the committee have expressed their opinions on how they feel about abortion. And yet we know that 1 in 3 women have abortions. We know that all of us know women in our own districts, our communities, our own families who have had abortions. I mean, it's not considered a shameful thing in women's health. I mean, this is something that's been going on decades and decades and decades, way before it was even legal in the United States. As a doctor, I mean, is that a fact? Is that things that you know that you've studied in your medical background?
Absolutely. If you outlaw abortion, you'll just outlaw safe and legal abortion. So you'll turn these women who are already in a desperate situation into even further jeopardizing their own health.
Well, and then, I mean, to get us back to the point where you and I are talking here about fact, all of these things we're talking about an alleged video that was made by a dubious company that had a dubious purpose. And yet we should not, if we are going to stick to facts, accept a video that has already been proclaimed as being highly edited by a dubious company with a specific purpose in mind, to embarrass the physicians who were on the video, unaware that they were being taped, talking in medical language about tissue that is legal in certain parts of the country. That we are now, like you said, this is a witch hunt. I mean, I still, as a member of this committee, have no idea why we're here, which direction that we're going. Excuse me, Madam Chair.
Have questions, and you've kind of dominated the questioning process. If I may ask the witness a question. Part of Missouri statute is that it requires that a physician providing abortion services be in a certain mileage perimeter of a hospital where if there was an emergency, it could be treated. Are you aware of that?
Yes.
Statute?
And you read it to us this morning.
Yes. Well, thank you. Thank you for remembering. Now, why do you think we would put that into law? And this is not a gotcha. This is like medically looking at it. What are we talking about? Why is that essential for there to be a distance?
I know why you put it in law, because you wanted to make it more difficult for these clinics to operate. It does not protect anyone. What I need to do, if I'm doing a procedure, I need to know that I have a place, a way to manage my patient if something goes untoward. If I'm treating somebody for hypertension, I need to know that there's a cardiac surgeon that I have access to if they have a heart attack. Do I have to be able to do cardiac surgery to treat their hypertension? No, I do not. But I do need to know that if I'm telling my patient, I'm the person who's going to take care of this problem for you, that if you have a problem, I know exactly what to do for that problem and who to connect you with. To say that the obstetrician gynecologist who's performing a procedure in an ambulatory surgery center themselves has to be the one who has the privileges to do the next step procedure, that is in no way designed to protect the woman. That's designed to be inferior to her getting care. That does not help. That's why you did it. just be honest. I applaud the honesty of those who say, let's make it hard to do this. But to say you're protecting a woman, that's just a lie. Or you're really just misinformed.
So, but explain to me why you think that that's not important, that they do not, because we've had privileges that have been out, I mean, should they be licensed within or have privileges within the country, within the United States?
So I think it's appropriate to see that the physician doing a procedure is appropriately credentialed. And there's a way to define a process for that, which may or may not include hospital privileges, depending on what procedure you're trying to credential them for. There is an appropriate way to do that. It's also appropriate to expect that a physician treating a certain condition has the ability to manage all of the other things that go wrong by having a team of people with whom they work to handle those things. I do not do bypass surgery, and yet I treat cholesterol, I treat diabetes, and I treat high blood pressure. So should I not be treating those diseases because I don't do the bypass surgery? No, but I know the bypass surgeon, and I know their phone number, and I know how to get them there.
But I know that many of the hospitals have a mileage requirement which their physicians have to live within so that they can arrive at the hospital.
So that's different. So that's saying the hospital says, if you want privileges at this hospital, if you want to be on staff at this hospital, you have to live within a certain distance, because that makes sense. Because if I'm going to send my patient to that hospital that's supposed to have cardiac surgery available, I want that hospital that says they have cardiac surgery to know that they can get a cardiac surgeon within X amount of time. So if that hospital is providing that service and they claim to have a cardiac surgery department, they should require that they have ample cardiac surgeons within a certain time frame from when the patient might arrive. That's completely different from saying I have to be there.
Well, I think that mileage is something that we've used in the law and has been recommended in the law, that parameter of being able to provide services at the hospital. So it's not unprecedented that we have used that. All right. Thank you very much. I think, do we have any more questions with this witness? Representative Lauer?
Yes, briefly.
Okay, you may. Thank you.
Sir, I appreciate you being here and taking the time to testify along with everyone else. And I certainly appreciate the fact that you are very, very destined and determined to speak on facts. Really do appreciate that.
Thank you.
So when you talked about that women would not mourn the loss of an embryo, what facts do you have to support that?
I've had many patients come to be.
What facts do you have to support that?
Do you say there's facts dispute that point? Do you know?
Well, you brought it up. I'm just asking you to substantiate it with the facts.
I can find some facts for you on that if you like. I'll get back to you on that.
That would be very interesting, because the way it came across, unless you've been there and done that, you wouldn't appreciate that. Thank you.
Sorry.
All right. Thank you very much for your testimony. We're going to go to our next witness. Come forward, please. Good afternoon. Do you have we need you to fill out a witness form.
I will fill it out before I leave.
Okay, please tell us who you are. And
I am Bonnie Lee, resident of Columbia, Missouri. Had not intended to come as a witness today until I had more questions arise from the testimony from our Director of Department of Health and Senior Services. I hope to come for some answers today, and I'm leaving actually with more questions. Number one, because I do reside in Columbia, the licensing and the safe care for women in this Planned Parenthood sector is very important to me, and we've been watching it very closely. And I am very disturbed actually to hear the director say that there has been an inspection every year. When we have under sunshine requests that I work with have asked for those inspection reports several different times between 2010 and 2012, and the only one that we get is one that was done in 2011. There have just been, and with that, the actual inspection record, the checkoff sheets and things are not there. So that concerns me when she says they have been done, but when we have under sunshine requests, had been told, actually essentially been told that there was no documents and that there had been no applications. The other thing that concerns me with their oversight and licensure, and are they protecting the health of the people of my state, is when, and looking back at this, trying to think of the term now, for the lawsuit that was in 27 that had a settlement in 2010, I actually have those records. Again, some of the, knowing that there's not evidence that what had been waived in 2010, issues that were pertinent to the safety for women in that clinic may not have been resolved, and on a new licensure, they're just being waived again, even though their own regulations say that they must relicense as a new, under a new license. That is concerning for us also, since when we looked at in their own regulations 3030.010(1H, it says that if a ambulatory surgical center fails to do their procedure, and I'm kind of paraphrasing this, but you can go to that section yourself, for 14 days or more, if they fail to participate as an ambulatory surgical center without written notification to the Department of Health that they shall relinquish their license and have to apply for a new license. We know for a fact that 3 different times between 2010 and 2012, the Planned Parenthood of Columbia has been without a physician, without a doctor to do their abortions. So therefore, they could not be doing this for much longer than 14 days at a time. The Department of Health and Senior Services has never provided us with that written information, that notification from the clinic, and yet they hire another doctor several weeks, several months later and start doing abortions again. So have they been doing them illegally? And our department has not been an appropriate oversight of that.
Inquire. And you just said something about Planned Parenthood has been without a doctor for perform abortions. Did you just say that? And then they had hired one?
Yes.
Okay. Can you tell this committee then approximately what is the time period that they were without a doctor before they found a replacement? Can I ask you that? Open window time. Approximately.
If I'd been prepared to witness, I could have brought you the exact times. But I don't, but between 2010 and 2012, I believe there's been 3 different times that they have been without a physician for more than 2 weeks at a time, which is what the regulations are. Therefore, they could not operate as an ambulatory surgical center when the only reason they get the license for a surgical center is for abortions. So that they should have then submitted a written notice to the Department of Health and Senior Services. And since we have not ever received those records that was ever submitted, I would assume it was not done.
So you have the days documented, is that right? The period of time when they were open without a physician?
Yes.
Okay, I'd like to have a copy of that, please. Thank you.
Representative Ely.
Inquiry, please. It appears that we're having a hard time with inspections. I'm not here trying to debate Planned Parenthood. I'm looking at it as a state representative. I'm here to make sure that our different departments are being ran and looking out for the best interest of the citizens, that our departments being ran efficiently. And I'm kind of wondering, as this day's moved on, that do we need to have things a little closer to the folks at home? Would it be better to have the Boone County Health Department oversee some of these issues that are going on here if we're not able to accomplish it at the state level, these inspections? And so those are some of the things that come to my mind as I focus on what's transpired with Planned Parenthood. If we're here in Jeff City and this has gone on in St. Louis, there's a great distance, and I'm thinking, well, something's not working here in Jeff City.
And so, as been stated, trying to get some information. And so I'm like you, ma'am, I'm walking away with more questions than what I arrived with. So thank you.
Now, would you go over that process that you employed to try for the sunshine request of these records? Could you give me just kind of a timeline as best as you remember it?
Well, we, when we noticed that they had hired another physician and had started abortions there again, and it had been greater than the regulations had stipulated, we had submitted a sunshine request for any license applications, for inspections, had received some of the information from a 2011 inspection, which again did not really give all the checkoff sheets and things. But within that was no information on this notification that they had been without doing abortions for a significant number of weeks. So we just kind of started watching that. And so twice more, we saw them hire a physician after that period of time, and had submitted a sunshine request for any license applications and was essentially told there were none. So we didn't see a waiver. We didn't see a notification that they were ceasing those activities, and some type of continuance given by the department. We just had nothing. And so we just continued to try to watch that timing very closely. Just citizens of Missouri.
Okay, all right. Well, any other questions for this witness? All right, thank you very much. Do we have another witness? Should you please come forward? I have to remind you to fill out a witness form.
Yes, ma'am, I will.
Thank you. Please tell us who you are.
My name is Kathy Ford, and I'm here to say that we do care about the women. We care about their protection and their safety. And as a person who has stood outside of the Planned Parenthood since February of 2008 and held men and women in my arms who cried over what happened in that place, people driving by who stopped and said, "Thank you for what you're doing. I wish someone would have been out there when I went in there. I wish someone would have given some assistance to me, because I would not have aborted my child." The thing that concerns me is that the doctor who is coming to Columbia is from the St. Louis facility. That facility has 28 known medical emergencies in the last 5 years. Allowed or stood for. When we tried to get sunshine requests on that, we knew that there were 28. What came back was that there were around 50 that we did not document, but those were stonewalled, as Representative Allen knows. So those 9/11 calls, we're not able to find out exactly what happened to those women, but members on the sidewalk did document 28 ambulances come and leave. So that concerns me. And it concerns me because Columbia Planned Parenthood does not meet the regulations. They do not meet them. The doorways are not wide enough. The hallways are not wide enough. You cannot get a gurney in there. And if this doctor is coming from St. Louis, and I'm not saying that they were her patients or not, but we have to protect the women of Columbia. We have to protect the women of New Missouri who are going there. And as a person who has stood outside there, sometimes till 11 o'clock at night, until the last of the surgical abortions were finished, and to see women coming out, moaning and crying in pain. They need to have these women protected. And those specifications need to be done. There's a reason why we have laws, and they are to protect the women. And we care about the women. That's why we're there. And even though they put up a big fence, they think that this big fence is in front of Columbia now. But the word and the care of the women and men who stand on the sidewalk will go right through that fence, and we will help those women. Another thing, there have not been any abortions in the Columbia Planned Parenthood for 3 years. The last abortions were June 28, 2012. I remember that day forever in my life. 3 years. When they started those abortions again for that period, they were booked up. You had to wait for an appointment. Well, do you know how many women came after 3 years when this service that was advertised all over the airwaves, the newspapers, everything? Do you know how many women came for that service?
We do just have
6.
another minute or two and then.
Okay, I'm almost finished. 6 women came. And on that Monday, 5 of them came back for the procedure. So all I'm saying is we need to protect these women. And as long as Columbia Planned Parenthood is open, we will be there offering help and hope to those women. And thank you very much for what you're doing. Thank you for checking into this.
All right, thank you for any questions, witness, if it's brief. All right, yeah, all right, thanks. All right, we will post our next meeting sometime in the next couple of days. Most likely, well, we'll find out when it's going to be, but it'll be sometime in the next couple of weeks. So with that, we're adjourned.
See you, Chris.
Yeah, probably.